Hi, this is Dave Rockamora. I'm a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. Thanks for joining the webinar today. It's about data culture with embedded analytics in action. We're going to also hear from Aaron from Looker and Scott from Casper, who will talk a little bit about how Casper is using Looker and AWS to make do some real interesting stuff for their business. So just to get started, I'm going to give a quick overview of some of the data solutions on top of AWS and to sort of set the stage for what Aaron and Scott are going to talk about. So just to start with some statistics here. So the amount of data that's out there and available to be used is growing. It's estimated that by 2020, for every single human on the planet, we'll be generating 1.7 megabytes of data every single second. From our devices, from our interactions with other things, just day in and day out, every second generating 1.7 megs of data. One way to look at the market of tools that are used to process and analyze and understand this data is to take a look at the Hadoop market. And it's forecasted that it's going to be over $1 billion market by the year 2020. It's growing at a 58% compound growth rate. So really the big data market is accelerating. Lots of new tools and products and services are becoming available to look into the data that we're all generating. The thing is, even with that, there's a lot of data that's not analyzed. So for all of the data that we're generating and working with, only 0.5% of that is ever really analyzed or used right now. So what that really means is that there's a huge opportunity for organizations that can analyze and understand that data to gain some competitive advantages. So here's an example of a couple of customers, of AWS customers that are using AWS and data to do innovative things for their customers. FINRA, they're a financial regulator. They're using AWS big data tools to understand and analyze markets, to look for suspicious activities and understand how the markets are working. Netflix uses analytics and data to track not only streaming performance and technical information about their platform, but also to help them plan the content and the shows that they're developing to make sure that they're building content that their customers will engage in. Another example here is Kellogg's, makers of lots of fine breakfast foods. They're using data and analytics to understand the best way to promote and talk to customers about which sort of products they have available to get better breakfast on the table for every American, everybody around the world. So it's pretty interesting ways to use data that you might not normally think about. So why are customers like this choosing AWS for big data? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, AWS is immediately available for working with big data or for working with any kind of data. There's no need to provision a data center or buy servers and set them up and things like that. Anybody can get started right away just by opening up an AWS account. Additionally, we have a lot of broad and deep capabilities. So broad capabilities like things, services for compute, for database, for storage, for archive, for messaging, for analytics, all built into the platform that's sort of all over the place. And then they also go really deep. It's not just one or two instance types or one or two kinds of storage, but for customers that need to use compute capabilities that include GPUs, we have GPUs. If you need extra memory for certain kinds of memory-intensive, processing, we have that available too, and many different varieties of storage for whether you have like really hot active data that you're working with, or long-term archival data that you might be running reports on. Those kind of features are in the platform and available for customers to use in all different kinds of ways. Next, AWS is a trusted and secured platform to work on. I mean, these companies and these organizations trust AWS with some of the most sensitive information. And what makes them comfortable with doing that? Well, first and foremost, security is really baked into every single thing we do here at AWS. We say security is job zero here. So every product that we build, every feature that we release, everything that we do, security is at the number one priority. Customers' data is safe inside of AWS. You don't have to take my word for it either. AWS carries a number of compliance certifications such as SOC 1, 2, and 3. It's suitable for PCI and HIPAA compliant workloads and many others. So customers are finding that AWS is a safe place to run their infrastructure. And then finally, AWS is very scalable. So you might be starting out today with just a small amount of data, but that might grow over time. As you do more business or you turn on more things. You might be collecting more data, understanding more data, analyzing more data. And you can count on AWS to be able to scale for you without having to pre-plan anything. You can just sort of turn up the amount of capacity that you need just when you need it. So these are the reasons that customers are choosing AWS for working with their big data workloads. So to go like a little level deeper on the AWS side, AWS is sort of like there's a collection of services that support all different kinds of things on top of AWS. And I've sort of highlighted just a couple services here that are really relevant for big data. And we'll hear about some of these when Aaron and Scott talk about how Casper is using Looker with Redshift, which is a data warehousing product that we have. But I've bucketed these into 3 buckets: collect, store, and analyze. So if we look on the collect side, there's services like import, export, or Snowball, which allow customers to send devices that are filled with terabytes and terabytes of data. Snowball can support 80 terabytes of data. It's a device that gets mailed to you at your data center. You can load it up with data and mail it back to us, and then we'll load it into AWS for you so that you can start working with it. Pretty good way to move a lot of data without having to occupy your internet connection. You can also use these products to get the data back out, you know what I mean? So after you've run your analysis or computation, you can use import, export, and Snowball to get the data back to you and to your data center if you choose. With the data that's in AWS, there's many different options for storing the data. S3 is a popular one, the simple storage service. It's an object store that's has a very high level of scalability, can support almost any amount of data. We have customers with petabytes of data stored on S3. We also have services if S3 is not for you and you'd rather use something like HDFS, we have Elastic MapReduce, which can support storage in that way. And we have some archival storage like Glacier for that long-term storage of records or things that you might not need immediately, as well as index storage through our database products like Redshift, DynamoDB, and Aurora. So if you need to store data that you need to query and access kind of rapidly, those are other options for you too. Once you have the data stored there, it's no good just sitting around. So we have a couple tools that can help you analyze that data. We have customers building stream processing pipelines with Kinesis and Lambda to get real-time analytics about their data. Customers using Elastic MapReduce to run all kinds of batch and streaming jobs to do real-time analytics or do any kind of analytics on data. And even just EC2. EC2 is the Elastic Compute Cloud. Customers can spin up computers to run whatever kind of software that they're using or that they need to process and understand their data. So really, I gave a couple of examples here, but here's some more to talk about what customers are doing with AWS when they put these little services together to build their solutions. And we have customers that are building big data repositories or data lakes, customers doing real-time analytics for clickstream data, and that might be for e-commerce or online ad serving or virtually whatever. I'm pretty excited to hear from Aaron and Scott to hear about what Casper's doing with Looker and AWS to understand about the example that they're talking about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron from Looker, who's going to give us an overview of Looker and talk about how Looker and AWS are working together.
Great, thanks, Dave. I'll just start by giving a brief overview of Looker and Looker for AWS specifically. So first, Looker is a data platform that makes it easy for everyone to find, explore, and understand the data that drives your business. And this is a brief overview of how we accomplish that. So first, Looker can connect to any SQL data engine. It does all transformation in database, which means you don't have to move your data. Data is as fresh as it is in your database. Looker is able to do this because it utilizes a modeling language called LookML, which is really an abstraction of SQL. It allows you to create a data model that all users can utilize, which creates a single source of truth throughout an organization. Because everyone has access to the data, anyone can ask and answer their own questions. Here's an overview of Looker for AWS. So Looker can be deployed on an EC2 instance that either Looker hosts for you or you can host that in your own VPC. Looker can connect to RDS, Redshift, EMR via Spark SQL, Hive, or Presto, as well as Aurora. And then you use Looker's modeling layer on top of that to create your business metrics that can then be explored by all of your business users throughout your organization. So here are 3 technical pillars that make it possible. First, Looker is 100% in database. That means you can leverage all your data, you can avoid summarizing it, moving it, and it's as fresh as it is in your database, as I mentioned before. Then you use the LookML modeling layer, which enables analysts to create business logic that can be deployed across your organization. And then Looker is deployed just as a web server. So it's a web app that can be accessed from a browser on any device. So here's some integration highlights between Looker and Redshift, since that's what Casper is using. The power of Amazon Redshift is directly leveraged by Looker because all transformations are done in database. That also means any function that can be leveraged in Redshift SQL can be leveraged in the LookML modeling layer. Looker has invested in providing the highest level of support for Redshift, and we work with AWS to make sure we have the best integration possible. And we've got a great customer references using both Redshift and Looker, including Sony, Lyft, Yahoo, and Docker. And here you can see sampling of our other customers across verticals like e-commerce, technology, marketplaces, financial services, media, and ad tech. The LookML modeling layer really makes Looker flexible to be used in any industry and for many various use cases. And with that, I'll hand it over to Scott from Casper.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you very much to AWS and Looker. We are a very data-driven company at Casper, and I think it's in large part because we found such great partners like AWS and Looker. And actually, the whole Casper BI team was over at the Looker conference the last 2 days, and it was a lot of fun meeting people and hearing about a lot of the other cool things that people are doing. And on that note, I'd like to introduce two of my colleagues, Danny and Duncan, who are also going to chime in later on the presentation. They are the actual true experts in all things Looker, so I figured you should hear straight from the horse's mouth. Who is Casper? We are a New York-based sleep startup. We were founded in April 2014 with one perfect mattress. We were data-driven from the beginning. To find that one perfect mattress, we tested thousands of different combinations of foams and covers to find that perfect mattress, and we continue to evolve it constantly using data-driven techniques. About a year ago, our perfect mattress was joined with a perfect pillow and sheets, and pretty recently it was joined by a perfect foundation and dog mattress. So we've had quite a few big changes in the last 2 years. We've gone from that perfect mattress that cuts out the middleman and ships directly to you in a I can't believe they fit in it. How did they fit it in a small box? And now we are multi-product. We're multinational. So we launched in the UK, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and we're multi-channel. So we're also in over 70 West Elm locations around the US. So you don't have to just you don't have to just order online. You can actually go to West Elm, or you can go to our pop-ups in LA or London, or our showroom on Bond Street in New York. And now we're also multi-species with the dog mattress. It's really exciting because, like I mentioned before, we are incredibly data-driven. And the story I'm going to be talking to you today is kind of a large part about our evolution. But first, before we dive in, I wanted to talk a little bit about the data team. So at Casper, the data team is a shared service. We have this partnership model where we work with all the different areas of Casper to enable them. So we have no outputs of our own. We enable other teams' outputs. And as a result, their successes become our successes. And kind of our motto is to enable better, faster decisions through information, visibility, and analytical expertise. And at the end of the day, what that means is we have to be a good partner. And as a good partner, we always have to be providing the level of insight and support that our internal clients need, which is actually pretty challenging in a fast-growing company. If you imagine we're constantly evolving as a company, our data needs constantly have to evolve as well. And the team has to evolve either in terms of resources, skills, or tools to enable it. And I mean, as many of you may imagine, having out of your experience with data and this type of stuff, it actually takes a while. So we actually have to know where the business is going before it gets there, so we can prepare. And here's an example of an area where it was a bit of a close call. So the last slide says data powers everything we do. And in our case, that was until we outgrew our data infrastructure. When I first started, we were doing everything in Excel. We had our production databases, and we had these big Excel files. And the Excel files, they used ODBC connections, and they were pretty good. It was one of the first projects I had when I came to Casper. It was answering things like, what were sales yesterday? What's return rate? What are our, what size is the most popular? Who's using financing? And it worked until it didn't work. I remember when I first joined, I asked for database access, and they just emailed the database over to me, and it was I think it was like 20 megabytes. It's a bit bigger now, and we got to a point where basically the system as it stood was grinding to a halt. But before I kind of dive into why it was breaking, I want to talk about why it worked. I feel like people often are so excited to get these fancy tools and to build this kind of bulletproof infrastructure. But what I really recommend is make sure you have the right tool at the right time. Looker is an amazing tool for us, and I can't wait to have Danny and Duncan talk more about how it's enabling us. But we pulled the trigger at the right moment. Excel is such a versatile tool, and with things like ODBC connections, you can get a long way. I mean, you get to a point where you can't, but I'd really recommend it de-risks it, and it essentially, when it came to implementing Looker, we had already iterated so many times in Excel that we knew exactly what we wanted. Versus if you kind of make a move or an investment too early, then you just actually don't know what you're looking for. So my encouragement is these tools are great, and they've given us superpowers, but just don't be in a hurry to get off Excel if you don't need to. And so where were we? So this big Excel file is something that I started when I first joined Casper 2 years ago, and then we handed it to an intern, and then the intern handed it to Duncan, and we just kind of evolved it, and it became this crazy mess. It required data refresh from the data team. We were the only ones with the ODBC connection, the only ones with PCs. There were limitations on speed and size of file. It was overwhelming to say the least because it didn't really have a great UI. Analysis was siloed in files. People couldn't do much more with it other than look at the data. And you couldn't query across sources. So we have a e-commerce database, and then we have a shipping database that we've made in-house, which is called Bedpost. And to join anything between the two databases, you literally had to download both sets of data, join them, and then analyze. Anything ad hoc became a huge task. And then no one place holds all the information. I thought it was everywhere. And then, of course, something that Looker solved for us tremendously is inconsistent definitions. We used to do things like filter out our shipping address for our own office from the reports. And then after a couple office moves, it just became like too much of a task, and none of us could be bothered because that meant we'd have to go through every single query in every single file to update the query. At the end of the day, the solution was not efficient or scalable, and we needed a tool to take us to that next level. Enter Looker and AWS. These are the tools that have allowed us to get to that next level and to become a data-driven company. There was a point where I think really if we hadn't made this move, we would have plateaued and peaked, and we would have been the data team would have been an anchor slowing down the rest of the company. So how do we pick it? So first of all, Duncan, who you'll talk to later, led a project to scope out all of the different options in the market. We looked at all the alternatives, and we found that this kind of Looker AWS combo fit with our model and how we wanted to operate our company. I won't go through all the different alternatives we looked at. I'm happy to chat more if people have questions. But kind of at a high level, we wanted to own our data warehouse because our data warehouse was going to be used in so many other tools that we wanted a visualization and data exploration level, and then we wanted a separate database and underlying infrastructure level. So why Looker? At the end of the day, it was because it could enable our whole company with relatively little training to answer their own questions. So that means efficient data modeling. Go in there once and set a definition, you build the model, and that means everybody in the company can use it. Easy to manage source of truth. Revenue is revenue is revenue. Anybody in the company, they pull our gross revenue measure into a visualization, and they'll see the same number. There's this beautiful visualization layer because you'll see so many tools where the analysis, the pulling the data down, and the visualization is separate, and that just makes it more difficult and makes people less likely to use it. And then it's intuitive UI and NoSQL. For us, that was a must. We have a very data-driven company, but not many people have a SQL background. And of course, I'm all for people learning SQL, but with tools like Looker, it's making it less and less necessary. And then Redshift, it is, you talk to anybody, that is the platform you use for running a data warehouse these days. It's a central warehouse for all of our data. It helps us join previously siloed data. It was also very similar to Postgres, which we use internally. And then we use the AWS ecosystem, so it just made sense. And then we implemented in phases. And before I dive into that, I wanted to say that when we kicked off this project for Looker, I gave the entire team the mission to put themselves out of a job. And I didn't mean that in a scary way. I meant it in the kind of hopefully exciting, empowering way where we wanted to enable and automate. And we saw Looker as the key to allowing us to do that. And so the phased approach, we wanted to kind of de-risk. We wanted to tackle different parts of the puzzle at one at a time, and to get. I mean, if you do it all at once, there's a lot of risk, and you also don't get the value until you're done. Whereas we got incremental value with each iteration. So first we copied data from our production databases. Then we just did it faster and better. And then we built specific data marts using ELT, and we'll talk about why we chose ELT versus ETL. And with that, I hand off to Danny, who will talk to you about how we did it.
Thanks, Scott. So, hey everyone, as Scott mentioned earlier, I work on the data team along with Duncan, and me and Duncan, along with the help of the rest of our awesome data team and some of the tech team, have helped to implement both Looker and Redshift over the course of the last year. So I'll talk a little bit about a couple of the first two phases, how we did it, and some of the benefits and drawbacks to those. So for phase one, really the goal there was to build a central data warehouse and get all of our production databases into that data warehouse. As Scott had mentioned, some of the drawbacks we previously faced were we have a number of different production databases, and joining between those two or three databases was impossible to do without it all living in the same data warehouse. So we tackled this problem by using an open source project called Donors Choose and writing some scripts on top of that to translate from Postgres to Redshift, and then ultimately doing batch loading into Redshift on a 6-hour refresh rate. So this allowed us to get basically replicas of our production databases into Redshift in the form of different schemas within Redshift, and allowed us to kind of do a lot of that analysis and querying that wasn't currently possible in a much more efficient way. On top of that, we implemented Looker, and that really allowed us to take that type of analysis to the next step. So we then had all of our data in one centralized warehouse with Looker pointing to that warehouse, and we're able to build out a ton of views and dashboards and explorers on top of that. So in the end, that phase one was very successful for us. It opened up data to the rest of the company that currently wasn't available, and made it much easier to access, and as Scott said before, kind of built a centralized definition around what the metrics were that we were defining and where you could find those. Some of the drawbacks that we had from it, though, were data wasn't anywhere close to real time. So it was refreshing every 6 hours. Each of the production databases was refreshing every 6 hours, offset by about 1 hour, and each of those refreshes took anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to complete. So it was a pretty big process to refresh the data, and there was a number of times where we would notice that the data refresh cycle would break, and there just wasn't very much visibility into what was causing that. On the Looker end, like I said before, we were able to get all of the data in there, but the Looker front end was a little bit left behind in terms of the implementation, where we were basically visualizing every single column from all of our tables within Looker, and putting the onus on the end user to understand which fields are necessary and pulling it in, which ultimately ended up being a little bit unusable for some of the end users. So phase 2 we moved to was copy faster. And essentially what our goal there was to move from this full refresh cycle to a cycle that was much more real time and also took a lot of the engineering and load maintenance work off of the tech team. So what we did with that was we utilized a tool called Stitch, which was formerly RJ Metrics, and they have a pipeline integration that allows you to integrate with Postgres as well as a bunch of common third-party sources. So for us, those third-party sources were Salesforce, Google AdWords, Facebook, and then we built a couple of APIs with the help of our tech team to integrate some additional third-party vendors as well. And that allowed us to get our data up to basically real time. So within 30-minute refresh cycles, our data was always available in Redshift and ultimately in Looker. And Stitch has a really easy-to-use UI that allows you to quickly pick tables that you want to include, pick fields from those tables, turn them on, turn them off, and set what cycle increment you would like to refresh that data on. So that was a huge win in terms of making data even more available to the end user. Users could now go in and see, for example, like what are today's sales. We could have reports that show our operations team shipments that still need to go out. So that type of information that currently wasn't available beforehand was now made available. In addition, it also, like I said before, Stitch is like a fully managed tool, so it took a lot of the resources that we needed to devote off of our engineering team and allowed for a lot of support from the Stitch team in general to help with any issues and with logging as we were able to integrate this. So finally, I'll move to phase 3, which Duncan's going to talk a little bit about, which is our ELT model.
Great. Hey, Duncan here. So, yeah, building off of what Danny was talking about, part of the reason we did things in the phases we did is you want to sort of maximize impact while minimizing time to benefit. And so, you know, phase 1, as Danny said, is just getting it in there. That was going to be the maximal benefit, was just getting all the information in one place and making it accessible. Next was making it more real time and more manageable from a load process standpoint. And then phase 3 sort of encompasses all of that. So Danny covered a lot of the load stuff. And finally, we kind of tackled the transform piece. A lot of people have probably heard of ETL. This is the sort of common way that a lot of businesses historically have managed data pipelines, where they will actually do the extraction from your production database or other third-party sources. You will then have a job or set of jobs that transforms that data, and then you load it into your data warehouse. But because we were so concerned with time to benefit, and because both Redshift and Looker are very flexible in terms of the way that Redshift stores and reads data and the way that Looker writes queries, we were able to capture a lot of benefit by doing the transform at the end. And so we ended up going with that approach after talking to a bunch of folks, one of whom was this great consultancy. You guys should check them out, Fishtown Analytics. They've got this open source tool called DBT, the data build tool. And basically what that allowed us to do was the transform piece. So DBT, somewhat similar to Looker, is the SQL abstraction that allows you to Git manage all of the SQL that you are writing as an analytics team, and reference as either views or CTEs other SQL files in that same project. So without getting too deep into the weeds, what this allowed us to do was take all of that normalized data that we were pulling from our Postgres production databases through Stitch and denormalize all of that data into these super wide pre-aggregated tables that have a lot of the business logic baked in, and take away a lot of the sort of compute stress that happens if you were to run that query directly through Looker. This also was super valuable because they do things like incrementally update these wide tables and manage the dependency graph between all of these tables. And they do this all in a nice manageable way that you can very easily deploy to a EC2 Tiny box through AWS, and so that's kind of what we ended up doing with them. The end result of this was, again, these pre-aggregated tables. So because of the way Redshift works, it's really fast to do table scans. You can scan one of these columns really quickly, pull all of the data you need, and so instead of having to do 20 to 50 joins for each Explorer and Looker, we did that in DBT, materialized that as a table, and then basically pointed Looker at these new super wide tables using sum distincts and count distincts. We're able to significantly reduce the number of joins that were done in Looker, and also sort of focus on Looker for that final piece that Danny had mentioned on really providing a great end user UI. So DBT kind of created this gating function where we're only bringing in the measures and dimensions that business users really care about, and then we're using Looker as that last mile definition for those measures, as well as sort of all the UI around it. So next I'm going to talk a little bit about what success looks like. These are some looks that we've pulled from the Looker server. So you can actually look at usage stats, and you can see that this top chart is our weekly active users over time. So you can see that's been steadily growing, and we're really proud of the fact that adoption at Casper has gone so well with Looker. And then below that is a stacked bar chart of all of the different business units that are using Looker. So these two charts for us are really powerful because it just shows that we've got a ton of weekly active users, and it's really widespread across all the business. Concretely, what this means is kind of what we outlined at the beginning, and this is, I think, very much in line with the philosophy that Looker talks about when you hear them talk about their awesome products. So access for business users. Business users should be able to answer questions for themselves. It should be easy to pull data and visualize it. There should be a central location where everyone has access to all the existing analysis that has been produced for the business, whether it comes from the data team or functional analysts within another business unit. There's one place where all this is saved and can be shared. Thanks to sort of the updates we made, this data is refreshed and up to date. That makes it actionable and usable, and Looker makes it easy to consume this data in myriad ways. So that could be through the web app, that could be through emails, that could be through Slack, webhooks, embedded, all of this stuff. So that's the business user side, and then for us as a data team, we now have and manage a single source of truth. All the analysts understand that model to be the source of truth. We get great insight into usage, so just like the last slide showed, we actually can measure our success in terms of Looker by how many people are using it and who's using it. Our business logic is centralized, so we're not redoing revenue or figuring out what attachment rate means or any of that stuff. It's Git managed, so that makes it easy to collaborate. It makes it easy to go through version and see what people have done. And it's really allowed us to take a much more technologically driven approach to our evolution, which, as Scott alluded to earlier, is a huge challenge when you're growing as fast as Casper has been growing. So specifically, we've got a couple of case studies. So I'm going to go through this one, and then I'm going to pass it back to Danny to talk about one more. So this one is around our supply chain. They are one of our biggest business units in terms of folks that use Looker. They're great. They are a very data-driven team, and so they keep us really busy. And so this specific challenge that they were facing is that we've been growing really fast and selling a lot of mattresses, and the supply chain team's job is to ensure fast delivery of those products. So through Looker, we were able to institute a series of dashboards where we were able to set up a daily meeting reviewing mattress inventory snapshots, how many days on hand we had, as well as looking sort of at a success metric, which was our order to ship SLA. So how quickly were we going from a customer placing an order to that product being shipped? And by just looking at that week in, week out, day in, day out, we are able to drive up, you can see the small chart on the right, we were able to drive up our overall SLA. So fairly simple use case, just looking at the same data day after day, but because it was so easy to access in Looker, it was really able to improve our performance on this specific KPI, and then, in turn, really improve the experience that the customer has with us. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Danny, who's going to walk through a second case study here.
Thanks, Duncan. So yeah, so the final case study here is one of the challenges that we faced was that the executive team needed actionable metrics and the ability to track against goals while seeking trends over time. So basically they have a weekly meeting where they want to be able to see what are the top metrics, how are they performing, and what insights can we glean from those metrics. So our job as a data team was to provide them an easy-to-use dashboard or view that allows them to see those types of metrics on a weekly basis, as well as seeing some of the trends. So our data team here kind of collaborated. So myself and Duncan, in addition to our awesome marketing analytics team, put together a department-based kind of dashboard for each business unit that housed kind of the key metrics for that business unit. So the final solution was to have a dashboard for each department. There would be 4 columns within that dashboard. The first column would be a weekly view, and this weekly view would track against what the goal for that week would be. Right next to that would be a month-to-date view that would track against the month-to-date goal. Same for quarter-to-date, and then finally there would just be a trend line that would show the previous 12 weeks to give an idea of like which way we're trending on these key metrics. So we were able to put that together using Looker, and I can say it's been hugely successful, and we continue to iterate on it to this day, but I think it's definitely helped drive business at Casper and has been a huge improvement for us. And so finally, kind of to wrap this all up, as Scott mentioned when he kicked off kind of our case study piece, his mission for us as a data team at Casper was to put ourselves out of a job using data and automating as many reports as possible. So to that end, we've kind of failed. We've been able to utilize Looker and utilize AWS to build a ton of cool reports and visualize data across the business. And building that increased access to data, as well as having more sophisticated clients asking us questions, we've learned has actually resulted in even more tougher questions, which is an awesome problem to have, especially us as a data team. The more questions we have, the more challenging projects we get to work on. So we've definitely utilized Looker to that end, and I think we'll continue to be successful doing that. So.
Yeah, and thank you, Danny and Duncan. It's just weighing in before we go on Q&A. This project kind of took a couple months, and it took a dedicated effort from across the team. And I can objectively and completely honestly say that from the lowest level to the highest levels of Casper, it has been a tremendous success in enabling people and really evolving our data-driven culture. I mean, I love just going into seeing the Looker usage stats every day, and they keep rising. People keep asking good questions and asking us to add things in. We've really drunk the Kool-Aid, and I would be remiss to kind of go further without thanking the amazing Casper Analytics team for doing this. It's a pleasure to work with these guys, and it just to see the kind of the cool stuff we're continuing to push out every single day. That's what just keeps getting me excited and keeps getting me excited to learn. So yeah, so that's it from us, but happy to answer as many questions as you have, and we can also connect offline and continue to chat.
Very cool. Thank you, Aaron, Scott, Danny, and Duncan. That was really neat to hear about that use case. So we're going to go to Q&A here, but first a couple things. So right now on your screens you should be seeing some surveys. about the webinar today, please please fill those out. We do use that feedback to help improve the webinar program, so please get that filled out. And if you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A pod. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can, so keep them coming as you think of questions, or if you've been stewing on a question during this webinar, this is now the time to get that out there so we can get it answered. I'll say right away and up front, you will be receiving an email in the next couple of days that will include a link to the slides and a recording of this webinar if you want to review the slides or follow this up or follow up with this on your own time afterwards. Okay, so let's go through some questions. I think the first one here is for Aaron. Regarding Looker, you had mentioned that Looker has a modeling layer. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that might work?
Yeah, sure. So Looker's modeling layer is called LookML. So LookML is actually a language that's an abstraction of SQL. So that's where you're going to be defining your business logic, ultimately your dimensions, your measures, your table of relationships that you want to expose to your business users in a click and drop way. So they don't actually have to write SQL to the database. They can use the metrics that you've defined, but you're still actually writing SQL. So it enables anyone to really ask and answer their own questions of the data.
Cool. And then another question, around Looker. I mean, so Scott and Danny and Duncan from the Casper team were talking about using Looker with Redshift, but it also supports other kinds of databases too. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We pretty much support anything that supports robust enough SQL. So that's going to include relational databases like the RDS, Postgres, MySQL, Aurora, MPPs like Redshift and Snowflake, as well as big data engines like Spark SQL, Hive, Impala, and Presto. So cool. we support a lot of different things.
Yeah, there's a ton of fun names in the big data ecosystem right now, right?
Yeah.
Well, cool. So on that topic, I mean, over to Scott. You mentioned that you did some kind of selection to try to determine, which tools to use for this project. What were some of the? Can you go maybe a little level deeper? Like, what were some of the highlights, the reasons that you chose Looker and Redshift?
Yeah, and I will turn that over to the person that did the selection, and that's Duncan.
Yeah, happy to chat about that. So I think there are a couple of different kind of approaches people take to this. Our philosophy at Casper was we really wanted to pick tools and services that did one or two things and did them really well, as opposed to picking options that kind of promised everything. And so in the case of Redshift, it is a world-class data warehouse, and it does that really well. It also jived well with sort of our current our capabilities at the time. So I think, as we mentioned in the presentation, it has very similar dialect to Postgres, which our analysts were already used to using. There's a robust ecosystem around Redshift. It's been around for a while. And a lot of different tools play nicely with it, including Looker. So those were some of the criteria for Redshift. And again, for us, we already sort of use AWS for a number of other purposes. So our tech team kind of provided their input, which was very valuable, and it jives nicely with the other AWS services we use at Casper. For Looker, the transparency was really important. So it's pretty close to SQL. LookML is its own language, but it's pretty close to SQL. You can see the SQL that it's writing. It's all Git managed. There's not any hand-wavy integrations. You set up a connection on the back end like you set up a connection to a database anywhere else. And while it has a nice front end, it's very transparent, and it writes SQL well, and it visualizes that data and provides access. So that access point to the business, that was what they were promising for that. Similarly, things like Stitch and DBT, we've decided that DBT is going to be any of the transformation we can do in SQL, we want that to be in dbt. That's dbt's job. And from a loading perspective, we've got a fully managed service that all that does is load data from one or multiple places into our warehouse. So for us, it was really about picking the right tool to solve the specific problem, breaking down what those problems were and why they're important, and then evaluating on a case-by-case basis what the best possible tool was for each of those problems.
And I would add, different organizations will approach this problem differently. For us, we were happy and willing to put in potentially more effort to bring together multiple tools or platforms to produce the best result. Some people might be looking for a kind of a turnkey all-in-one or a black box. That's just not kind of how we approach these problems, and we can confidently say by kind of picking best of breed for each tool, you end up with a far better result.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that actually matches a lot of my experience working with AWS customers. Is people are, there's just such a huge ecosystem of tools out there and products that customers are putting together the thing that, is a good fit for their organization. So another question that's coming in here is about deploying Looker. So Aaron, you had mentioned there's a couple of options for that. You can run it in your VPC, you can run it other places. Can you just go over those one more time?
Yeah, sure. So Looker is actually just a jar file deployment. It requires kind of a medium-sized Linux box. So either we can host it for customers as a service, and we do that in AWS, or customers can deploy it themselves wherever they'd like to.
Oh, cool. And then for the Casper team, can you give us any insight about how you chose to host that, and maybe why a customer would do one or the other?
I mean, it was just much easier for us to let Looker manage that. So I think for our use case and needs, that's what we went with, just because it's one less thing we have to worry about.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's some things that a self-hosted Looker instance is better for. And again, this is me talking from kind of research and talking to other people, not personal experience. You can do custom visualizations on a self-hosted Looker. For us, a lot of our problems are, the complex part is the thinking about it. The end result or question can be distilled pretty easily in a chart. I think if you want really, really, really custom visualizations, it may make sense to host yourself.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting to have that kind of option. So another question here, you're talking about this project, and I think, Scott, you had said that this transformation from the database plus Excel files to Redshift and Looker took a couple of months. Could you be a little more specific? Like, about how long was this transformation did it take you guys?
Cool. Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, the extended period in which we lived in Excel benefited us tremendously, because as soon as we wanted to implement Looker, we knew exactly what dashboards we had to build. We didn't have to do some sort of kind of request where we went across the company and interviewed everybody. Actually, in the way the data team at Casper is structured, we have Danny and Duncan on the business intelligence team, and then we've got Cherry, Bex, Jenny, Michelle, and Saprithi on the marketing analytics team. And kind of each one of those team members works directly with a kind of a team or an individual within the company. So we had direct connections with everybody in the company, and we knew pretty confidently what they wanted. So we signed on with Looker March 1st. April 1st, we had Looker completely implemented. We had everything that could be moved out of Excel into Looker, and that was kind of our version 1 of Looker. And then when we kind of did this most recent project to kind of copy faster, I would say Duncan, you want to walk through? Duncan, Danny, you want to walk through the timeline of the most recent project? How long that took?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the timeline for the most recent project regarding Looker was probably about a month and a half project overall. First steps of the timeline was a lot of the ELT stuff that Duncan had talked about, with getting those super wide tables set up so that we could be pointing Looker to those tables. And then from there, as Scott mentioned, each of us kind of tackled our own business unit in terms of building out the specific measures, dashboards, and automated reports that needed to be sent out. So step one was taking like a fine-tooth comb through the LookML, making sure every single dimension and measure had a tooltip, an accurate description, a proper label. So really just focusing heavily on the UI. Because the goal of this really, when we kicked off this project, we had two goals. It was to make Looker, make our database and end users in Looker feel that Looker is significantly faster, and also to make Looker much more accessible and user-friendly for the end users, so that they feel comfortable building their own reports and not having to ask the data team necessarily to build them some pretty simple reports.
And what I would say is, it's beautiful. It's like, I mean, this might make me sound like a nerd, but it's like a bonsai tree. There is every single measure, every single dimension has a tooltip. Everything has a description. Every name has been thoughtful. Every view and view grouping is thoughtful. The folders. I mean, it is. This isn't just like a rush job by any means. We produced a best-in-class implementation of Looker, and the reason it was so fast is because we were focused. As a team, we divided and conquered. Everybody pitched in, and we knocked out a project which in some companies will take 6 months to a year. We did it in a month and a half.
We did get help from Fishtown Analytics for about a week of that.
Yeah. So I won't take full credit. Yeah, without so we at the time we didn't have a data engineer at Casper, and so the guys at Fishtown came in and helped
that's
us
pretty neat
tremendously.
to be able to move so quickly. And that kind of ties into a couple of other questions here that are coming in about building new reports and dashboards for your end users. Do you have like a person now on your team that's dedicated to LookML, or are you finding that most of your end users are functional enough to be building their own reports and things like that inside of Looker?
So LookML is exclusively done by the data team at Casper. We kind of see it as creating the playground for everybody to work in, and we're super responsive. We have a Looker question Slack channel, which is it's a nice little pulse check on the kind of appetite for Looker. People are constantly saying, "Hey, can you add this in?" or "What happened to this dashboard?" or "How do you add this?" So we do the LookML, and then like I said, each individual in the analytics team is specialized in one area of the company. So Danny, for example, works on executive reporting and strategy, as well as kind of our CX analytics. And so he'll be doing kind of larger media requests from CX, but he'll also be helping them to iterate their dashboards. We've gotten people around the companies to start building their own dashboards, and we're teaching them how to fish. And a lot of people feel very comfortable, and explorers are doing a kind of, so in Looker, you can either explore from scratch, or you can take a pre-made look, which is essentially a visualization, and explore from that. And we've gotten a lot of success in that. I mean, like I said, in our last week, we had 75 active users on Looker. And it again is a testament to the fact that we don't just like put Looker in the wild and say, "Hey, it's here. You know, if you build it, they will come." We've done a fantastic job of kind of really socializing it and working with each team to make sure what they need is in there, and they know how to get it. I mean, people will say, "Hey, can I have a dashboard for this?" Our standard operating procedure is to go over to them, sit next to them. Well, first we make sure everything's in there and the LookML is right, and then we go and sit next to them, then we build the dashboard with them.
That's cool. So have you found that with this in place, is there still ad hoc reporting going on? Are people building their own systems or running their own Excel stuff on the side, or are you seeing most stuff migrate into the Looker solution for you guys?
So the pro and con of a tool like Looker is versus other tools. Looker is a fantastic enterprise BI tool, but the requirement is all the data has to be in Redshift or some underlying database for it to happen. And there's some work that's involved, let's be completely honest. There's some work involved in getting things into that database. And it doesn't always make sense to get everything in there. So anything that ends up in Looker probably starts its life off in Excel, proves its use case, that it's worth investing in putting in the database, and then it makes its way into Looker. So I don't view them as mutually exclusive in any way. It's more of an evolution or like a life cycle. And likewise, things that might be in LookML that might get old and might not be used, and then you kick them out. So you will never get everything in Looker, and I guarantee if you do get everything in Looker, you are not employing your resources correctly, because you could have a fleet of data engineers popping things into Looker, but really you could be deploying your resources better elsewhere, because not everything is worth the effort.
I think for Casper, Looker is just is the knowledge that there's an easier way to do it if you're doing it a lot.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, then one more question, Hin, then for the Casper team. Sort of, I wonder if you could give us sort of a preview of what's next. Where are you thinking about going next? What are you thinking about doing next when it comes to the data analytics that you're doing?
That's a great question. It's really exciting because we kind of, Danny jokingly said we failed at our mission, but we failed and succeeded in the same way. We have managed to empower people or automate the how many what's and where questions. How many queen mattresses did we sell yesterday in New Jersey? We no longer have to answer that question, or maybe we have to answer it once, and then someone has a tool to answer it over and over themselves, which is leading our internal customers to ask harder questions, and kind of those are what we're focusing on. And B, it's giving us more bandwidth to tackle some more interesting predictive questions. And those are some of the things that we're working on in the next couple months. We're not there by any means completely. We're kind of in this transition stage. But that's next for us, really pushing the output. We at Casper are a very data-driven company. It drives how we develop our website to kind of create a better experience, how we develop our products to kind of make happier customers, how we develop our marketing to make sure everybody knows what they need to know about Casper. It just kind of drives the pulse of an operation so we can deliver our products on time. It's the currency of Casper, and it's the lifeblood. And for us, it's just continuing to evolve. We as a data team, to be a good partner, as I mentioned earlier, have to always stay one step ahead. And just that's what you got to push. You can never rest on your laurels, is what I would say. And that's what we'll continue to do. And it all comes down to having great people, and for that I am appreciative. And again, slight plug: we are hiring. If anybody wants to join the Casper data team, I can't tell you much, but we've got some very cool things planned in the next 6 months.
Cool. Well, I look forward to hearing about them when they're public. Awesome. Okay, so we're reaching the top of the hour here, so I think we're going to close it out. I just want to say thanks again to Aaron from Looker, and Scott, Duncan, and Danny for joining us from Casper.